Welcome back, everybody, to World FinTech Festival India 2021. Now, the importance of data protection has increased as the amount of data created and stored continues to grow at an unprecedented rate. There is also little tolerance for downtime that can make it possible to access important information. Now, to find out about the journey from device protection to data protection, we have a session for you, which is coming up next. And this session is moderated by Mr. Sunil David, Regional Director for IoT with AT&T, who will also be moderating this discussion and will be joined by Mr. Milind Mungale, Chief Information Security Officer, NSDL E-Governance Infrastructure Limited, and Dr. Lopamudra Basu, Advisor with Cloud Security Alliance APAC Research Advisory Council.
Thanks, Amit. Good afternoon to all the delegates who have joined us virtually, and a warm welcome to the esteemed panelists, Dr. Lopamudra and Mr. Milind Mungale at the Singapore FinTech Festival, World FinTech Festival India chapter. As far as the introduction is concerned, I am Sunil David. I am the Regional Director IoT responsible for the overall strategy and business for AT&T for the India and the ASEAN region. Joining me in this panel discussion are Dr. Lopamudra Basu, who's the cybersecurity leader in the financial sector, and also an advisor, Cloud Security Alliance, APAC Research Advisory Council, and Mr. Milind Mungale, Executive VP and CISO of NSDL E-Governance Infrastructure Limited. We will be shortly deliberating on the topic device protection to data protection. Now, before we actually begin, let me very briefly set the context. Today, our world is battling the pandemic and an equally relentless assault from the cyber criminals from across the world. Even before the pandemic, the cyber threats were always there, right? And especially over the last 20 months, the cyber attacks have increased, not just in terms of its frequency and sophistication, but also in terms of its scale. As per a State of Security 2021 survey report of ISACA, a well-known body which does certification, many organizations in India, including those in the financial services industry, are experiencing an increase in cyber security attacks. As per this report, 32% of respondents indicated that they had experienced more cyber attacks than the year before. And it's not surprising, right? Most frequent types of attacks are similar to those what they faced in the previous years. Some of them include social engineering, advanced persistent threats known as APTs, ransomware, unpatched systems, injection flaws, and so on. The Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India reported nearly 1.16 million cyber attacks in India last year, thrice as many as 2019, as per an Economic Times article. So we are truly in what I call as a cyber pandemic. Now, given this context, cyber security today is non-negotiable. I repeat, cyber security is non-negotiable. And all organizations, whether it's a large enterprise or government or a small business, they all need to invest in the right people and technology to help stop attacks. So we have the tools and resources. I think the challenge today is people. I think we are really short of cybersecurity professionals in India today. More so, the financial services companies who deal with all our hard-earned money, they have also been under constant attack. Now, there are a number of approaches that organizations can adopt to prevent, detect, and respond to threats, right? I'm not going to go into the details, but very quickly, things like adopting a zero trust mindset, securing the cloud. We've seen a lot of applications move to the cloud over the last 18 to 20 months. So how do you protect your application in the cloud? And also taking what I call as an ecosystem approach, because no one entity can fight cybercrime alone. It requires everyone to come together, the policymakers, the business community, government agencies, individuals. They all need to come together, share information, and forge the right partnerships. We can also see today the convergence of networking and security, leading to adoption of what we call as the SASE framework, Secure Access Service Edge. It's a framework which companies are looking at. And finally, the security by design principles, which needs to be applied to pretty much every element, if you look at it, whether it is endpoints, networks, data, and applications. Now, given this context, I wanted to hear the views of the two security leaders who are there in our panel. So firstly, I would like to welcome Dr. Lopamudra Basu, and I also would like to welcome Mr. Milind.
Namaskar.
Thank you, Dr. Lopa, and thank you, Milind, for joining us. My first question would be to Dr. Lopamudra. Dr. Lopa, so you come with the very extensive leadership experience in the financial services domain. You've been responsible for cybersecurity, risk practice, governance, compliance. So can you share some of the best practices that financial services companies can adopt that kind of cover the entire spectrum, right from devices to networks and data and applications?
It's a very relevant question in today's context, but this is something where we can spend hours and hours to discuss on this matter, because when we look at today's context, there are three important things. One is, most importantly, what we are trying to save is data. Where data is sitting, that is your system, and through network it is flowing back and forth. So considering that, there are a couple of things is very, very important. First thing is very challenging for every organization. Where is your critical data sitting? Because from the time the digitization started, today we are using a word called digitization, but it started long back, mid of the 70s or something. Actually, people start using the computer and start creating the data without understanding what would be the value of the digital data and how we are going to face challenge to protect them. So there is a data explosion already. Now, most of the organization is clueless where those critical data is sitting. So first thing, organization should know that what are the critical data, where they're sitting and how they are floating across the organization. Second is, nobody is actually operating in isolation. You have your partner, your support provider, and they also have a good access to your ecosystem. They're part of your ecosystem. So what kind of access they have and who are the people having the critical access? Then it's coming to the platform security. You have a platform. Is that particular platform is adequately secure? Secondly, the network security and system security. Though I have mentioned secondly, but it's most important because data is sitting there. That's not I cannot ignore it because it's secondly. And that word is associated. Basically, your server or system needs to be properly hardened to ensure that they are not easily accessible and they are accessible with certain set of rule, and they are have an inbuilt mechanism to protect against the attack. Now, when coming to the devices and network, it is also very important for our organization. They should know the asset. So asset inventory, that is a current asset inventory, is very important. Also retiring the asset which are outdated, where security become a challenge because of new attack or new sophisticated attack crafted. So retiring them or decommissioning them in time. Now coming to the application part. When you are adopting any application, we need to understand that where that application going to sit, what kind of data they are going to handle, what kind of access we are going to provide and whom. So that is one thing. And now, irrespective of your network, devices, or application, most importantly, any technology coming with the inherent risks. There is nobody can demand in this connected world that, hey, I have application or I have a device or a connected network, which is risk-free. I have completely risks that. That's not possible. So identifying that risks and addressing them at root. Yes, as you very correctly mentioned, design. Security by design, security by design as well as privacy by design. Also, financial sector is highly regulated. When you are operating across different countries, it is very important to understand the legal requirement. Legal requirement, sometimes we are very focused on the privacy and sometimes IT security related, but you can see that even there are sectorial law apart from that. For example, if we are taking India as an example, we have an IT law. Currently, we don't have anything specifically named as a privacy law, but I would say privacy law is the embedded component within our IT law. And another thing is that when it is coming to the company law of India, it's very clearly says that, you need to have a proper technology risk management in place. When it is coming to the risk management, the word itself is very broad, technology risk management. Today, entire business is on technology. Even your physical branch is dependent completely on the technology. So that risk needs to be identified. Risk management today is no more a checklist work that I will have certain set of risks and tick it. Yeah, it is done. No, you need a very particular best of breed professional who is having clear security understanding, capability to deep dive inside the technology to find out and capture those risks, and also act as an advisor to the organization that how somebody can work out of a solution to address those risks. Because lots of cases, we have an assumption that risk management professionals are not security professional, but think from a perspective when we are conducting a business, you do a thorough financial risk assessment, and you need a specialized person who is an expert of finance to conduct that risk assessment. Same way, we need a cybersecurity expert with add-on expertise to dive and capture those risks. But obviously, they are not solution provider. They need to work with the organization, different function to understand how those risks can be addressed. And that way we can control the risks within the appetite of the organization, because you cannot say that, there is a zero risk or null. So how we will bring them within the capability of organization appetite, that is very important. Now coming to this entire context, it's device, network, application, anything. Toxic access is the major challenge. So how you will handle your access, that is very important. And I would say, with this agile model and with this micro-segmentation, it's actually, initially, it is a kind of, challenge for the people to understand that how to handle those access using that in cloud or, on a micro-segmented area. But currently, if you look from a risk perspective, it's actually facilitate us to, give more granular accesses. And when it is coming to another context, that is the cloud, cloud sometimes is a kind of, challenge. But if we know that what data we are sending there, what kind of control we are having in-house, generally we cannot replicate exact control to the cloud. We need to see that I have a X number of control within our organization. What are those objectives? What are the risks addressed by that control? Go and work with the cloud provider, understand how they are addressing those objectives, and see those controls are there. So basically, we need to match the control objective, not the control, because cloud is a different environment. Sometimes cloud may provide a better security because cloud is capable to afford the best, security, because that's their business. Whereas somebody is in different business, there is no point for them to, extensively invest on that area.
Right. So I think very valid points that you made, Dr. Lopa. You touched upon devices. You talked about, having those experts in the organization, risk management, And then you also talked about cloud security, where it's far more secure now to have data on application in the cloud rather than on your own on-prem data center. But just coming to cloud security alone, is it going to be a shared responsibility between the guys who provide the cloud services and the organization which is hosting applications in the cloud? Will it always be a shared responsibility? Okay.
Absolutely, because sometimes somebody may, I'm just giving an example, you may find somebody says that this particular cloud section is PCI compliant or EU GDPR compliant or some other things, right? Or HIPAA compliant, anything. But it is very important that they provide a matrix. This matrix is having 3 sections. This 3 section is responsibility of cloud provider, responsibility of the client, and shared responsibility. So when you are looking at that, very importantly, where it is a cloud provider responsibility, you should have a proper agreement in place that they should provide you time to time update how they are maintaining that, and it should be transparent between you and your cloud provider. Wherever is your responsibility, obviously you need to address that. Share responsibility, you need to work in collaboration with them. Also, it is very important in case of any breach, you should have a capability to do the kind of investigation. Once the breach happen, you cannot, go and do everything in place. You need to create that ecosystem beforehand in collaboration with your cloud provider, with your partner, because most of the cases you may need to get involved with the third-party investigator, because you need to give the proof in front of court of law. So you need the third party. So you need to create that entire ecosystem beforehand. Also, you may need to, it is advisable to, practice that using the playbook or something to see that how effectively your plan is working.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Lopa, for those insights. Let me get Milind into the discussion. So Milind, you represent NSDL e-Governance Infra Limited, pretty much touching every citizen in India, right? Issuing PAN cards, TIN, eKYC. I also understand that your organization now plans to build open source platforms and entering into new areas like health and education. So can you share some of the best cyber practices that your organization adopts, kind of covering the whole spectrum, right? From devices to data and applications?
So, thanks for that question, Sunil. Yes, what you said is right. And if you closely watch the kind of services we offer, all services are around the data. What we do is we capture data, we hold data, we process data, we render data. So everything is around the information. And what kind of information? It is either personally identifiable information or it is a sensitive financial information. So from that point of view, right from the inception, when we started in 1996, we always had this awareness and alertness about the data security. And we started our own practices on cybersecurity and data security right from the beginning, when there were not too many practices or standards available. ISO 27001 was not there. At that time, we used to follow BS 7799 as a standard. And there were not too many experts and consultants available in the market, because that time this data security and cybersecurity was not so prevalent. So from that point of view, we tried to arrive at our own practices, arrive at our own processes in a way that we can secure the data that we are holding, so that the trust and confidence of our consumers, our customers is definitely retained. Over a period of time, technologies came in, new standards came in, more awareness came in, external help came in, so we could go and build more and more better and more mature systems. But when I look back this last 25 years and look at how our information security journey has been, all said and done, as much as maturity comes, ultimately it all relies on 3 pillars: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So we have also been building all our processes around that. And as much as we say the new age technology and new age frameworks, but that good old defense in depth methodology has always been a success. So all our new adoptions have also been on the foundation of defense in depth. Now that we are into perimeter-less kind of an environment, there's nothing like a perimeter anymore. And each data element by itself has its own perimeter. Within the database, each row of data is a perimeter by itself. So whatever enhancements and whatever improvisation had to be done, we have always tried to do that. The second most important thing, the other three part where your focus is process, people, and technology. Now everyone knows this in theory, but there is one more aspect to it, and that is the actual practice that you follow. So you may be having processed fantastic documentation, you may have deployed excellent technology, and you may be conducting the ritual of making your people aware of information security, giving them training, showing a lot of budget towards it. But unless and until you don't bring all these things in real practice and you evaluate whether those practices are followed properly, it is all useless. There's no point in giving a lot of awareness training to the employees, but letting them put in whatever you want as a password. Or there is no point in putting a beautiful SOP and getting that SOP in the file only to show it to the auditors. So practice, the real practice, if you look from our assessment point of view, our internal audit point of view, we don't just look at the SOP, we look at the real practice. In fact, first we look at the practice and then go and check whether the SOP says the same thing. So there are so many such kind of things that we have brought in. And the four C's which are very important drivers for it. First C, when we talk of security, as Lupa also said, controls. Controls is the most important driver, right? But there are other pulling or supporting C's along with it. One is the compromise. How much is the organization willing to compromise any control for the sake of business? It's very, very important to know that you may be having best of the controls, but if the business demands and you are willing to throw away that control, compromise that control, it makes no sense to claim that you have that control. So we have very stringent practices around having any kind of an exception approvals. If anyone wants any kind of an exception from whatever are the company standard controls, we have to go through a very detailed assessment, and that approval is given only after doing a proper impact assessment. So the second C was the compromise. The third C is the convenience. So a control is as good as it is balanced on the other side by convenience. If you decide to raise the bar of convenience, the control will go down. So where should you allow? No, you cannot. Otherwise, you just lock all the data in a safe and throw it in the sea. All your data is secure. But that is not the objective. You need to access the data. You need to look at that data. You need to use that data. So convenience has to be there. You can't make it so difficult. Imagine if you are allowed to enter into a net banking site after giving 5 passwords and 2 OTPs, and apart from that, some other controls like secret question. You will stop banking with that bank now. You want convenience, but at the same time, your data is supposed to be kept secure. So balancing the control and convenience has been also one of the major principles that we follow. And third is compliance. And many people look at controls, it is only oriented towards compliance. Security cannot come because you complied with something. Auditor will be happy. Your audit committee will be happy. Your board will be happy. But not necessary that your data is secure if you strictly go by the compliance controls. So controls have to be implemented in spirit, not because of compliance. And compliance should come as an offshoot of implementing controls in spirit, not as a driver for implementing controls. So that is also one of the practice that we follow, that whatever security we try to put in, we try to put in spirit. And so automatically we comply with the requirements of law or regulator or any such standard process which our board has mandated. So this is how we try to orchestrate in principle. Of course, there is many things which I can share, and it's a subject of my passion. So, but I don't want to put you and the audience to sleep.
Maybe we'll have some other event where maybe we'll get a lot more time and maybe we can have you in at that point in time. But very important points that you raised, Milind. You talked about defense and depth, right? I think this whole aspect of a multi-layered approach, right? Security at every layer, holistic approach when it comes to security. You talked about controls, compliance, very, very important. And good point that you made, that you just don't want to implement controls just to comply, right? So I think, and also security should just not be a tick box, right? I mean, because if your network gets compromised, data gets compromised, then the image of the organization obviously takes a beating, and it'll take a while to restore that credibility with the end customers, right? So I think very, very good points. But just one question, Milind, you talked about people, process, and technology. Now, the big challenge that India faces today is the lack of cybersecurity professionals. There's a huge demand. Every organization needs people with cybersecurity skills, but we have a huge shortfall of that. How are you all managing, Milinda? Are you trying to skill up your internal employees? Are you trying to hire talent from outside? How are you addressing that part?
So look at it, why there is a problem of iteration. Why is it there? I have observed and talking to many peers in the industry, we keep on networking. I've been in the industry for so long, so we keep on informally talking to each other. What I've observed is primarily a lack of satisfaction and desire for more money are the two drivers for people to run away from an organization. Lack of satisfaction comes because they are told something and they are made to work on something else. This word game, trying to present something, you will be an analyst. Now that looks like a very big word, but actually what you will be doing, you will be sitting in front of the console and looking at the events. So the problem is that a person comes as an analyst and then he's asked to do this kind of work. Obviously, he doesn't want to do that for too long. So that is the reason why there is an iteration. So always what needs to be done is, one is that the employee feels that he is a part of an important work within the organization. Employee should feel that he is participating not only in the regular processes, but also contributing for the betterment of the organization. So what I do and what most of the people within our organization is that the work is balanced between something interesting and something rudimentary. All said and done, there is a set of rudimentary activities and there are a set of interesting activities. Most of the organization will have rudimentary activities identified for the people who are not so well performers and interesting activities identified for the people who are very high performers. We don't do that. We try to create a mix. We try to engage employees at all levels of all categories into both the kind of activities. So he gets to do something interesting and he also does something rudimentary. That maintains a good balance. Second, as far as satisfaction is taken care of, though money is a very important aspect, most of the time I have seen that people would not let go satisfaction for more money. But you keep on giving them necessary incentive, you keep on giving them necessary raise. You have a policy which is actually fair, and the employee knows that if he performs better, he will definitely be given whatever he deserves. That automatically helps us retain. So in our organization, our iteration rate has been not so high. Fortunately for us, we have been able to retain people. Not that we are able to retain everyone. We still have iteration. But when we take people from outside, we make sure that they are given proper orientation, they are given proper training. We try to identify the training requirements well in advance, publish them, so anyone knows that during this year what kind of training he is going to get. So they know that their upliftment has been a priority of the organization. So that way, anyone coming from outside easily gets gelled within the organization, and anyone who is within the organization, very few people leave, but still whoever is there with the organization, specifically from cybersecurity, information security point of view, they get to do some interesting work, they get to do some rudimentary work, so they balance it out. So that has been a very simple formula that we have been following in our work.
Right. Thanks, Milind. I think this attrition is an industry-wide problem, especially in the IT industry today. I think it's varying anywhere between 15 to 30%. So it's a big challenge that the industry has to deal with. Coming back to Dr. Lopamudra. So Dr. Lopa, can you share some trends that we are seeing that is playing out in the cyberspace today, cybersecurity space, especially in the financial services industry? Are we seeing a lot more threats getting sophisticated? People, we talked about people being the weakest link in the chain, a lot more awareness needed, more cyber hygiene needs to be built. So how can the fintechs and the financial services companies address some of these challenges? But first, we can just briefly talk about some of the trends that you're seeing, Dr. Lopa.
So when it is coming to trend, right, I think there are lots of discussion going on the trend part. One is obviously the attacks are become more sophisticated. And earlier, if we go back kind of 20-25 years back, people are actually scale up them and then they attack some of the organization to get a prominence or glory. Currently, it is not that. Currently, all are funded, all are, very well organized. Same way, there are continuously increasing need of compliance, right? Mm-hmm. And that compliance need is very complex because every region have their own compliance need. Every country is having compliance need. So sometimes this compliance need actually throwing another risks on the organization, which is actually already, Milind highlighted that, compliance is not able to give you the security, right? Mm-hmm. So basically, sometimes we can see that the increasing risks of green paper threat. Everything is green in the paper, though we are talking very less any industry about the green paper threats, because focus is the compliance, but focus should be move to increase the security level, implement the proper security, and get the compliance as the outcome of that security implementation. So we can see that, tweak between just get driven by the compliance, but yes, compliance is very important. So it keep that, trigger up that you need to have a proper security in place. Earlier, there are some small player in the industry if have a kind of mindset that, hey, nobody will attack me because I'm not such a big player. But today it's a sectorial attack. That's the trend of sectorial attack or regional attack is increasing, and you may be victim of that attack. So people are actually getting more and more security trigger, and that is, we can see that in every sector. Now, coming to that, most importantly, security is a culture. risks is a culture within the organization. Earlier, security and risks are majorly, specifically when it is coming to the cyber, is isolatedly work, some cases. And another challenge is when you are actually, not having a balance between maker and checker. So IT implement the security because 80% of security deployment is through the technology, and IT security handling that entire security. So what happened? It may get compromised because IT always have a priority on the deliverables. But now we can see that IT security is moving out to a different identity called enterprise, under enterprise security or enterprise risks, or maybe independently as a cyber security. And we can also see the more alignment between the technologies risk management and the organizational risk management is getting more balanced with that. And when we talk about the technology risks or the cyber risks, right, that's more jargon-driven area. When we talk with the stakeholder, you go and talk with the stakeholder within the organization or within the industry, it's very difficult for them to consume that, right? Because they are not expert in cyber. But nowadays, a trend emerged which is showing that aligning this technology risks with operational risks, with financial risks, regulatory risks, reputational risks, And it's become much more easier for the stakeholder and management to consume. Also, we can see that cyber and technology risks emerging as an independent risk category. If we look at the World Economic Forum report last 5 years, we can see that certain set of risks emerge as an independent category. Under the top 10 risks is related to technology, and data security, cyber risks are emerge as an independent category. Most interestingly, I found few categories newly. Inequality of digital asset, imbalance of digital asset going to be get created. It's a risks, because if people are not more aware. So focus on the risks related to cyber is more on, which is going to boost the overall cybersecurity profile. People are more focusing nowadays on third-party risks and shadow IT related things, which is another good thing. And now coming to the security culture, sending awareness mail or just, conducting a reorientation session in a year may not work in this ecosystem, because it's a connected ecosystem. Your finance is connected everywhere. It is on your mobile, it is on your some devices, connected devices, and you are connecting through back and forth with your client. So there are three sectors. One is awareness among, basic awareness among your employee, basic awareness among your client. Above that, the particular set of employee handling particular set of technology and data, we need to give them that awareness also. That is your, job and responsibility related awareness. And I think most important is that adding those specifically within any organization, security is no more responsibility of CISO or the security people, it's across. So a KPI need to be clearly defined for all the stakeholder within the organization, that what is their security responsibility, and that needs to be track of their performance, how good or bad they are doing. Based on that, you can do a survey also wherever, and also whatever the breach industry is facing or whatever the issues your organization is facing, analyze those and raise a kind of, ad hoc awareness based on those outcomes. Or you may be, include those components within your regular awareness like that way. Also, it is a carrot and stick kind of, deployment. So either employee can go for the carrot or can go for the stick. But yes, you need to create a culture from the top down approach that risks and security is the integrated part. And most importantly, when we are continuously talking about the risks, security, it's very monotonous for the people who are not part of this, right? So take a kind of, scenario. You can talk about that, how this hygiene is important, even your personal finance, when you are handling your personal laptop at your home, or when you are handling your mobile and using them, what kind of security is required, how you, what kind of threat your child may have. So it's allow you to create a basic hygiene in the mind of the employee. Then you take them and elevate to the next platform, that is the organizational security. Otherwise, it is always, have you completed your current year reorientation? Yes or no? Yes, I have done. I took those, all the questionnaire. It's done, and it's sit away.
Right. No, great points, Dr. Opa. You talked about culture, security culture. I think it all depends on the leadership now, right? I think security is no longer, as you said, confined to the CISO, but it has to be discussed at the board level, and one needs to lead with a security first mindset. I think that is what the need of the hour is. Let me move to Milind. So Milind, we talked about the open source platforms that you're trying to build, and we talk about open source platforms, they're using open software, open APIs. and you're building a number of your partners, right? So a lot of them coming into the ecosystem. And when you do that, when you're collaborating with a lot more partners, that again, you're dealing with a lot of confidential data. And you talked earlier about controls. So while you might have controls within your own organization, the moment you talk about partners coming into the ecosystem through APIs, how would you manage that, Milind? That would be a different challenge altogether to deal with, right?
Very true. I mean, and when we talk about such kind of partners, we have to also keep in mind that they are not covered under any kind of regulatory mandates, because they are providing service to you. So they are your vendors or your outsourcing agencies. So you cannot rely on any regulatory mandates being provided on them directly. So we have to take that responsibility in a way. While they are our partners, they provide services to us. We also sometimes have to act like pseudo regulators for them. So it starts with the journey. The journey starts with the beginning, when you actually have an association with such a partner. So making an assessment of such a partner becomes very important. We have a very stringent process around that. We evaluate what is their present standing, what kind of work they do, and what is their infrastructure, what kind of controls they have. Or people visit the premises from where he's going to give the service. Of course, in last 18, 20 months, that whole thing is not really relevant. But earlier, we used to go and visit, and we used to look at micro things like how the security guard at the gate acts with you. He's already knowing that you have come to evaluate them. So they all want to make you happy. So whether he's relaxing any controls for you, if he asks you to write the name in the register, and we try to post saying that I don't have a pen or I'm in a hurry, on my way back, I will try to write it. We just try to observe what is his reaction. If he sticks to the stand that no, this is important, I'll give you the pen, or it would not take even 1 minute, or you tell the name, I will write it, you just sign it. If he insists, that means we can be assured that they have relevant security culture right up to that level. And that is very important. Right. The second thing we look at is, this starts from the physical security itself.
Yeah.
If you can't physically protect, leave aside the digital. I mean, there's something which you cannot see in digital. In physical, you can at least see. So from that point of view, we do a detailed assessment, and we try to spend some time with them. We randomly go to any table, talk to the people, ask them, what is your password? Now that guy knows it's a very big customer who has come, some big officer from the customer side. If I disturb him, or if I make him upset, maybe he will go and complain about it to my boss. Whether he stoops down to that kind of pressure, and whether he gives away his password, or whether he tells clearly that, sorry, password sharing is not our policy, that itself indicates these are very small things. And we randomly keep on innovating, because it makes no sense to repeat the same thing again and again. People do know the question paper. So that is one of the things that we do. And in ongoing operations also, we are very clear about where all and what all data is being kept, and what should be the time to live for that data in that location. So for example, if we want PAN card allotment printing later to be done by someone, because there are millions of PAN cards that we allot, we can't do all that printing in-house. So if we have engaged some printer to do those kind of printing. Then as soon as the letter is printed and the proofread is happened, verified, and then it is dispatched, the data has to completely go away. So typically what would people do? They will delete the data, right click, delete, take the screenshot, look, I have deleted it, and send it. We don't do that. We make sure that after that kind of a deletion, whether it's also cleared up the recycle bin. So those kind of practices we have, kept on putting on them, and now they are also getting used to all it. Rather, they have completely got used to it. They do that even in their other business areas also. Then recoverability is there. We established in front of them that you deleted, you cleared the recycle bin, give me 5 minutes, I'll recover that data. Because there are recovery tools available which are very easily sourceable. So when we showed them this particular thing, they came back to saying that, okay, what is the solution? So we gave them tools which can wipe this completely. irrecoverably. You have to write it 7 times, or in certain cases 21 times with zeros and then it completely gets unrecoverable. We demonstrated that to them. So what we try to do is, instead of just acting as a pseudo regulator and mandating controls on them, we demonstrate how that controls is going to be useful not only to us but also to them. So it automatically creates a while, and we try to arrive at the solution which is either throw away, cheap, or free. So from that point of view, it automatically becomes that they start using that in their other areas also. And they come and tell in the review meetings that you recommended this, I implemented in your system, but we have now also started doing it across the company.
Okay.
Now that's, once a person thinks he has to do it, you don't have to do anything.
Right.
So that is how we try to manage the partner ecosystem. As far as their system interacting with our system, we follow strictly zero trust. Strictly zero trust. I mean, we don't trust anyone. And each and every application has to be checked for application security using OWASP or any such standard before release. And there is no periodicity. Many people do it. We do testing once in 3 months, once in 6 months. No, every release has to be tested. That is the practice which we have put in. And a partner ecosystem, their API testing, their integration with our system, that all, we have a completely isolated separate system in which we do all that testing. I won't call it sandbox because it is much more than sandbox. We do all that testing. Only when everything is satisfactory, then we bring them to production. It takes effort, it takes time, but it is better to be more careful in the beginning rather than be sorry later on. So that's how our approach is as far as partner.
I think they're very great insights, Milind, especially to the financial services companies, fintechs, because they are working in an ecosystem. And if they have implemented those kind of controls, they demonstrate it to the other partners and they start using that. I think, that's a fantastic way of making sure that, you kind of ensure, all of them follow those controls. So I think great points. We talked about zero trust, I think very relevant principle of least privilege, giving access to people, not based on their location, but completely based on their identity, right? So I think, again, a very important point. I've completely run out of time. I wish we could continue this discussion, but we have to stop here. And I don't think we'll have time for question and answers from the audience. But Milind and Dr. Lopa, thank you so much for your insights. I think wonderful. Dr. Lopa, you talked about security culture, very, very important. You talked about this whole micro-segmentation, which is needed, zero trust, which Milind, you talked about. You talked about the 4 C's. Controls, convenience, compliance, compromise also was the third one which you talked about. I think great points, defense in depth, right? I think very, very relevant points for all the financial services companies to adopt. So thank you so much for your time. And I hand this back over to the organizers. Amit, please take over from here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Sunil. And thanks to all our speakers who have joined us for this session today. And with that, we also move on to our final session of the day. And do not forget to refresh your web browser and join us for the World FinTech Festival India Day 1 finale.